Hey everyone, we're with Fractal now at Computex 2023. There's some echo in here, and also security wasn't going to let us in the building, but we're here now. This is the Fractal Terra. This is going to be available immediately, so they're announcing it today, and also availability more or less should be up by the time the video's up. The Terra is a Mini-ITX case. This is the primary thing that Fractal is talking about this show, although there were other things. That's the extent of what I can say about other things. Before that, this video is brought to you by Thermal Grizzly and the CryoSheet graphene pads. These CryoSheets are molecularly stacked in the Z-axis to encourage vertical direct thermal transfer from the IHS to the cooler. CryoSheet pads are made to be easily applicable for a thermal interface and completely avoid paste dryout because it's not paste. It makes them particularly useful for long service life systems with minimal maintenance. They come in multiple sizes for suitability on the most common laptops and desktop CPUs, and you can learn more at the Thermal Grizzly CryoSheets at the link in the description below. The most interesting aspect of this case, and I'm going to drop this down a little bit, is accessibility. So I'll demo that before we get into some other notes. Let's take one of the 800 chairs in this room. Not even one gaming chair in this high-end facility. So this is the Terra. It's a 10.4 liter chassis, as I said, Mini-ITX. Technically, it's got a 2-slot mount, but it can accommodate a little bit larger than 3-slot cards because of a unique feature, which is a mobile spine centrally. So this is a sandwich design, and this panel pops out like this. This is all aluminum externally, plus they've got the walnut, I believe it is, at the bottom. So this is the same wood that Fractal's using on the darker North. And by the way, actually, quick update on the North. So I was asking Fractal about availability. I know some of you were extremely upset that you were unable to buy one for a while. And I think my understanding right now is that they are available widely. So if you're waiting for the North, it should be back. And actually on that point, Fractal noted that there's this Flex riser kit, which is supposed to address one of the, I guess, critiques we had about the North, where originally fitting a vertical GPU and the fan bracket on the mesh side panel caused a conflict. This is supposed to fix that. The one you buy won't come with my fingerprints, though. That's special here. So top panel is off. It just sockets in, and no screws for the paneling. This is pretty cool. So the sides come out with this almost Lambo-esque design. Folds up like this, pretty good accessibility. And then the other one, let's pop that out also, comes up. There's two colors, which are this sort of off greenish, and then the more matte black next to it. The next part of the doors, and this I thought was pretty clever, so let's get a closer up shot of this. So over here, there's a tab, and we can pull that to pop the door, and then it just pulls out from the front there. So fully removable. And this is something that a few companies are trying to do more of, which is ITX you can actually build in without it being a massive pain in the ass. This is case fully exposed both sides. You can see the paneling here. So the first question I had was, is that actually all the way through aluminum? It only goes in centrally here, and there's actually some really fine detail on the CNC and on the bottom that Fractal was very proud of. So you see that in the curve, this like sort of chamfer down here. But for the aluminum panel, this is 8 millimeters thick. That is a massive aluminum panel. They've got another on the back. The wood is actually mounted. This was pointed out to me explicitly. I think we have a reputation, but the wood is mounted without glue, which is also appreciated. For the key point though, the thing that we were actually interested in is this mobile spine. Was this one pre-loosened, or is that this one? There are 4 screws centrally, 2 on the top, 2 on the bottom, that allow for, I probably should have done this one first, allow for, there we go, that one's loose, so let's move this over. Trade show chaos. We're going to scratch the table in one of the most expensive buildings in this part of Asia. So this panel, you see the 2 screws here, and I'm going to flip it over. And then there's another screw here and another here. And looking at these, they've got 7 tick marks. These are free moving. You don't have to mate the screw with a tick mark. It does make it easier to align the sides, because if you don't want it to be at an awkward angle, then it needs to be all 4 matched. But if we do a movement here, you can see that it shifts. So the GPU or the CPU compartment for the sandwich layout can become larger. And moving towards a 4 or a 5, I think 5 should, as I understand it, accommodate something like a Founders Edition size 4080 or 4090, same thing, cooler. And for the flow through, what you end up with is a flow through area on a larger cooler, a larger fin stack, ends up right here. And this is where the power supply is. And we'll come back to that. On a smaller card, or maybe like the Gigabyte Aero, where it's got that really extended one, that would potentially come through these cable channels if you haven't completely stuffed them with cables. So for the power supply, it's something we talked about with the in-win. With flow-through going straight into a wall is one option. There's not much path for it to escape. You get maybe like a millimeter or something of clearance, if that. So one option would be to flip the power supply and get the fan mounted on this side and feed the air into the power supply, which if you have a more robust power supply, shouldn't be a problem, but it depends on what you're using. We've obviously shown under some higher load scenarios, some power supplies have tendencies to explode. So if you are planning to pull air in through the power supply, it is actually important, not just this case, but any ITX case where you're feeding the GPU flow through into it, to keep in mind that you're running at effectively a higher ambient. And so this is where I'll plug Cybernetics, Eris, Hardware Busters, all run by the same guy. He does load testing at 45, 50C, which would be kind of like an equivalent ambient, high ambient temperature in a scenario like this. So you'd want a power supply that clears those requirements at that higher ambient. Anyway, you can mount the power supply both directions on this. And there's this extremely European 17 gauge extension cable that comes through. It is Fractal after all. And for fans, technically, you can get fans in the bottom here. So there are actually mount points for one, but it's pretty restricted in space. And as you can see, you're gonna end up hiding cables somewhere. Depending on how much you're moving this tray one way or the other, they might end up at the bottom. So this is something where you'd wanna go with slim fans, if any fans at all. However, the GPU being this close to a wall, basically the mesh front, does mean you have direct access to external ambient temperature air. So as long as this ventilation doesn't cause any major problems, it is actually able to breathe fairly directly without additional fans. So the only thing you'd have to think about is maybe VRM temperature on the motherboard. Includes a riser cable, it's Gen 4, and other points. I guess Fractal mentioned this, and I'll point it out as well. They think that probably someone is going to mount fans to the bottom of this, and you could, especially the slim fans. It's not going to be something that Fractal is officially marketing, but if you are planning to do so, just be advised that once you get shallower than a 1-inch distance from the fan intake, its performance drops significantly. So this would not actually be that effective. You'd basically want a leg extension if you were going to do that, but that's not how they're marketing it. So I think that covers most of this. A couple quick numbers. You can see CPU cooler max height. This is for the two different configs. Well, there's many different configs, but the two extremes of the configurations. There's a 77 millimeter max for the cooler height in what they're calling the max CPU config. So that's when you bias the spine one side or the other. And then a 48 mil for the max GPU config with the CPU cooler height. So that's your CPU cooler range. And then GPU dimensions are listed here as well. So you can see the change here is in this middle dimension, 62 to 33. Is this a touchscreen? Wow. So last couple points. I don't know if I mentioned, it's gonna be $180 for the case. It is, as stated earlier, available immediately. They had this was kind of cool. It reminded me of our In-Win Design Center tour we just did, where you can see the drawings of the cooler, or the case, some sketches of it. And we may have more on that in the future. And then the last point I had was this spine, as validated by a trade show swag pen and a business card, is 2 millimeters thick. So that is a very large motherboard tray. Typically you see like an ATX case, you'll see anywhere from 0.4 all the way up to maybe 1.2. But I think that about covers it. So thank you for watching. As always, check back for additional coverage. We went to Noctua, Scythe, Deepcool, a lot of other companies. And depending on how many we're publishing a day, you might not get all the notifications. So check the channel manually and subscribe for more. We'll see you all next time.